Alan Carter was Boston's most charismatic and trusted private detective until one night, without warning, he vanished without a trace. For 26 years, his disappearance remained an unsolved mystery, haunting the city and those who knew him. But in 2009, something extraordinary happened. Hidden inside an old office chair, Alan's long-lost diary was discovered, filled with cryptic drawings and secrets waiting to be unraveled. What really happened to Alan Carter? Who was behind his mysterious disappearance? Boston, 2009. A crisp October breeze swept through the bustling streets, carrying the scent of freshly brewed coffee and fallen autumn leaves. Megan Lee walked briskly along Beacon Street, her eyes glancing occasionally at shop windows. She enjoyed these quiet mornings, browsing through antique stores, exploring forgotten treasures from lives she'd never known. Today, however, was special. Megan had heard about a charming little antique store on a quiet corner, hidden between brick buildings worn by time. "Curious Finds," read the sign above the entrance. Stepping inside, she was instantly surrounded by a comforting aroma of aged wood and old paper, the soft tick of a grandfather clock marking the seconds. Her gaze fell upon an elegant yet worn-out office chair. Its black leather was cracked, and the legs showed signs of rust, but something about it drew Megan closer. She traced her fingers along the armrest, imagining the countless hours someone must have spent sitting there, deep in thought or consumed by work. Without much hesitation, she purchased it. Back home, Megan set the chair near her desk. She gently settled into the seat, but something beneath her felt strangely firm, unusually rigid for such an old, cushioned chair. Curiosity piqued, she stood up and examined it more closely, pressing into the seat. Her fingers touched an odd bump beneath the leather. Using scissors, Megan carefully cut through the cracked upholstery, revealing a hidden compartment. There, nestled inside the yellowed foam, was a small weathered diary. Its leather cover was faded, the corners worn from years hidden in darkness. Her heart raced slightly, her journalist instincts kicking in immediately. She opened it with careful reverence, flipping gently through pages filled with neat handwriting. Letters, blurred by time but still readable. Megan paused when her eyes caught strange sketches scattered randomly amongst the text. Intricate yet cryptic symbols she couldn't immediately decipher. A chill ran down her spine. Boston, 1983. Alan Carter was finishing his coffee at Marlene's diner, exchanging banter with the waitress, Betsy. Everyone loved Alan. With a confident stride and a contagious smile, he had the effortless charisma of someone comfortable in his own skin. His sharp wit often had people laughing within minutes of meeting him. "Another late-night solving crimes detective?" Betsy teased, pouring more coffee into his cup. "More like preventing marriages from imploding," Alan responded with a smirk. "It's tough work, but someone has to do it." Betsy laughed, shaking her head. "One of these days, Alan, trouble's gonna find you." Alan winked. "Then it's good trouble has such terrible aim." Leaving the diner, Alan made his way to his small but cozy office on Tremont Street. The city bustled around him, filled with life and possibility. Entering his office, he tossed his hat onto a hook by the door, settling comfortably into his familiar chair, the very one that decades later would find itself in Megan's possession. Alan shuffled through the stack of notes on his desk, sighing, as he reached for a folder marked Reynolds. Paul Reynolds, wealthy businessman, had hired Alan to investigate suspicions that his wife, Ellen, was being unfaithful. A typical case for Alan, straightforward enough, except nothing was ever quite as it seemed. Later that evening, Alan met Paul Reynolds at an upscale restaurant in Beacon Hill. Paul was a formidable man, tall, polished, always immaculate, but behind his confident exterior, Alan sensed unease. "Find anything yet, Carter?" Paul asked bluntly, swirling whiskey in his glass. "Not much," Alan admitted honestly. "Your wife's activities seem routine so far. She meets friends, shops, and visits galleries. Nothing suspicious, at least not yet." Paul's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of impatience passing through them. "Keep digging, Carter. I know something's off. Trust your instincts. I trust them more than my own at this point." Alan nodded, though something about Paul's tone unsettled him. The days passed in a blur of routine surveillance. Ellen Reynolds remained an elegant mystery, going about her day with an air of quiet sophistication that Alan found intriguing rather than suspicious. Yet Alan couldn't shake a feeling in his gut, a sense he'd grown to trust deeply over years of investigations, that something bigger was hidden beneath the surface. One rainy afternoon, while staking out Ellen's favorite cafe, Alan's phone rang unexpectedly. It was an anonymous voice, distorted slightly, making Alan immediately wary. "Carter, meet me at midnight. Alone. Quincy Market near the old clock. I've got information you'll want to hear." Before Alan could respond, the line went dead. His heart quickened. Anonymous meetings were always risky, but the promise of information was too enticing for any detective to ignore. That night, beneath the shadow of Quincy Market's clock, Alan waited. The air was damp, filled with the scent of rain-soaked cobblestones. He glanced at his watch. Midnight exactly. Footsteps approached, measured and quiet. Alan tensed instinctively. "Carter." The voice spoke softly from behind. Alan turned, slowly, facing a hooded figure whose features were obscured by shadows. "You're digging in dangerous places. Some truths are best left hidden. Who are you?" Alan demanded calmly, careful to keep his voice steady. "And what do you mean by dangerous? Stop investigating the Reynolds. Forget this case, Carter, before it consumes you." "Is that a threat?" Alan's voice hardened. The figure stepped closer, speaking quietly but firmly. "It's a warning. This goes deeper than infidelity. Walk away now, while you still can." Alan hesitated for just a second, his mind racing with possibilities. But by the time he gathered his thoughts to respond, the figure had vanished into the night, swallowed by the darkness and rain. Shaken but determined, Alan returned. To his office, his thoughts chaotic. He wrote quickly in his diary, noting every detail of the unsettling encounter, pausing to sketch out symbols that represented the clues whispered cryptically by the stranger. The pen trembled slightly in his grip, the stakes clearer now than ever before. The following morning, Alan did not appear at Marlene's diner, nor at his office. His phone remained unanswered. Friends grew worried. His brother Jack visited the office only to find it untouched, quiet, ominously silent. Alan Carter, the city's beloved detective, had vanished into thin air, leaving behind unanswered questions and a trail of confusion. Boston, 2009. Megan sat quietly in her apartment, heart pounding as she thumbed through the diary. Alan Carter's neat handwriting told mundane stories, small observations about daily life, but the strange sketches stood out sharply. Symbols, shapes, and oddly arranged figures, each sketch more peculiar than the last. Megan closed her eyes, briefly, drawing a deep breath. The journalist in her could sense it. These sketches held meaning. They weren't random. Alan Carter had deliberately hidden them in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. She picked up the diary again, determined. She knew little about the detective beyond old newspaper clippings mentioning his disappearance, but now felt deeply connected to him through his hidden diary. Alan's fate was a mystery Boston had forgotten over decades, but Megan knew instantly. She wouldn't be able to let it rest. She stood abruptly, gathering her coat. The sketches needed analysis, the diary demanded answers, and Alan Carter's forgotten mystery begged to be solved. Megan Lee was about to plunge headfirst into an investigation she knew might change her life, and at that very moment, surrounded by questions that blurred past and present, she knew there was no turning back. Her eyes lingered on the sketches one last time, their secrets whispered urgently from the pages. "All right, Alan," she said softly, determination filling her voice. "Let's find out what happened to you." Morning sunlight filtered gently through Megan Lee's apartment window, highlighting dozens of pages spread across her living room floor. She'd spent the night meticulously examining the diary found hidden in Alan Carter's old chair, but the odd sketches that peppered its pages still refused to make sense. Megan sighed deeply, frustration tugging at her resolve. After hours of fruitless attempts, she decided it was time for reinforcements. Digging through old newspaper articles, she found an address. Jack Carter, Alan's younger brother, a retired, police officer who still lived in Boston. Megan had to admit she felt nervous. How do you approach someone and ask about a mystery that's haunted their family for over 2 decades? Yet her curiosity was greater than her anxiety. Jack's home sat quietly on a peaceful street lined with maples, their leaves a brilliant tapestry of red and gold. She knocked hesitantly on the door. Moments passed, and just as she was considering turning back, the door swung open. Jack Carter stood before her, a gruff man in his early 60s, gray hair neatly combed, his eyes suspicious, but not unfriendly, yes? He asked warily. Mr. Carter, my name is Megan Lee. I'm a journalist. I recently bought something that belonged to your brother Alan, and I could use your help. Jack eyed her carefully, then sighed deeply. Come in, Miss Lee. Inside. Megan explained how she had found Alan's hidden diary and showed Jack the strange drawings. Initially, Jack seemed skeptical, shaking his head with disbelief. My brother had a knack for trouble, Jack finally said, his voice rough but affectionate. These drawings, Alan always loved puzzles, especially when he felt someone was watching him. Watching him? Megan questioned. Jack shrugged, a faint smile appearing. Alan trusted no one completely, not even me sometimes. He always said you never know who's holding the knife until it's already in your back. Megan raised an eyebrow, noting Jack's uneasy humor. Sounds comforting. Jack chuckled softly, a sad glint in his eyes. Comfort was never Alan's style, but he was loyal to a fault. If he left these sketches behind, it means something. Together they spread the pages on Jack's kitchen table, working to decipher the mysterious symbols. One sketch stood out, a crude outline of an old clock tower surrounded by scattered lines and circles. Jack squinted, leaning closer. Wait, this looks a lot like the clock tower in Quincy Market. Alan loved that place. Then let's start. There, Megan said decisively. As they walked through Quincy Market, Jack's dry wit slowly emerged, breaking the tension. Alan practically lived here, Jack mused, gesturing toward a seafood stall. Said the clam chowder was a better partner than any he'd had. Megan laughed softly, appreciating Jack's ease despite the seriousness of their task. They interviewed vendors who remembered Alan fondly, each recounting anecdotes of the charismatic detective, yet none offered real insight into the mystery surrounding his disappearance. Their next stop was Marlene's Diner, Alan's favorite breakfast spot. Betsy, now elderly but still sharp, greeted them warmly. Jack Carter, it's been years. Who's your friend? Betsy asked, smiling warmly at Megan. This is Megan. She's digging into Alan's old case. Found something of his, something strange. Betsy's eyes clouded briefly. Alan Carter. Boston lost something special when he disappeared. Megan gently showed her the diary sketches, but Betsy shook her head apologetically. Sorry, hun. Alan kept his cards close. But I remember he seemed worried days before he vanished. Like he sensed something terrible was coming. The deeper they probed, the clearer it became. Alan Carter had known something dangerous, something important. Reluctantly, Megan suggested, speaking with Margaret Carter, Alan's ex-wife. Jack hesitated, but eventually agreed. Margaret's townhouse was immaculate, almost coldly elegant. She greeted them politely, though her eyes reflected a carefully masked pain. Margaret, this is Megan Lee, Jack introduced cautiously. She's researching Alan's disappearance. She found something. Margaret stiffened visibly. Her fingers nervously adjusted her necklace. It's been 26 years, Jack. Why stir this up now? Because Alan deserves answers, Jack responded softly but firmly. Margaret sighed deeply. Alan always chased shadows. When our daughter Sarah passed away, he became obsessed. With uncovering secrets, his own grief consumed him. Megan hesitated, sensing the emotional tension. Mrs. Carter, Alan left behind some unusual drawings. We believe they could help explain what happened. Margaret eyed the sketches, her face pale. I'm sorry. Alan never shared this side of himself with me, not after Sarah died. He withdrew from everyone. Leaving Margaret's house, Megan noted Jack's silence. Are you okay? Jack paused, eyes distant. Sarah's death shattered Alan. He blamed himself. Margaret couldn't forgive him. Losing a child breaks things that can't always be repaired. Megan nodded gently, recognizing the heavy burden Jack carried. After a silent moment, Jack cleared his throat, attempting humor. Alan always joked he was better at solving other people's problems than his own. Looks like he was right. They visited Ellen Reynolds next. Elegant even in retirement, Ellen received them in her meticulously decorated drawing room. She remained composed yet cautious. Alan Carter? Ellen's voice tightened slightly. Why are you asking me about him now? Alan was investigating your husband, Paul, Megan explained gently, watching Ellen closely. He disappeared shortly afterward. We thought you might remember something. Ellen looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Alan asked me a lot of questions about Paul. My husband was a difficult man, Miss Lee, but that was many years ago. Whatever secrets Alan uncovered, they died with him. Mrs. Reynolds, Alan's sketches suggest otherwise, Megan persisted, showing her the diary. Ellen barely glanced at them. I'm sorry, I truly am, but I've already told the police everything I knew back then. As they left, Jack whispered, dryly, well, she's hiding something. Megan nodded, uneasy. They're all hiding something. Returning to Jack's house, they studied the diary again. Hours passed, frustration growing. Megan slumped back in her chair, rubbing her eyes tiredly. You remind me of Alan, Jack suddenly said. Megan looked up, surprised. He'd get that exact look when he hit a wall. Then, 5 minutes later, he'd jump up with some crazy idea. Megan laughed softly. Did those crazy ideas ever work? Jack smiled sadly. Almost always. Feeling inspired, Megan examined the sketches again. Her eyes fixed suddenly on a small drawing, an odd box-shaped structure next to squiggled lines she recognized as train tracks. Her pulse quickened. Jack, have you ever seen this before? He leaned closer, brows furrowing thoughtfully. Looks like an old warehouse or storage building near the old rail yards. Alan investigated a case there years ago. She stood abruptly, excitement flickering. It matches exactly this drawing. What if Alan hid something important there? Jack sighed dramatically, feigning annoyance. You mean we're about to go exploring some abandoned warehouse now? Megan grinned, feeling a renewed energy. You can wait outside if you're too scared. Jack chuckled dryly, grabbing his coat. Let's get this over with. Nightfall shrouded Boston in a thin mist as they reached the deserted rail yards. Rusted tracks vanished beneath weeds, the silence oppressive. They approached, cautiously, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Megan held her breath as they stepped inside the dilapidated warehouse. The air felt heavy, thick with dust and forgotten memories. They searched cautiously until Jack's flashlight illuminated something faintly drawn on the far wall, symbols identical to those in Alan's diary. Megan's heart raced as she traced them gently with her fingertips. Alan had definitely been here, leaving deliberate clues. She exchanged a determined look with Jack, who nodded silently, understanding the importance of their discovery. Standing in that eerie quiet, Megan knew they were close. Alan Carter's sketches had led them exactly here, unlocking the first piece of a decades-old puzzle, and whatever they found next would change everything they thought they knew. Megan and Jack stood silently inside the old warehouse, their flashlight beams darting nervously across the crumbling walls. The air was heavy, filled with dust and decades of neglect. Shadows stretched long, and every creak of the ancient structure made Megan's heart skip a beat. Jack moved cautiously forward, the wooden floorboards groaning under his steps. Alan certainly knew how to pick welcoming places, didn't he? He whispered sarcastically, attempting to mask his unease. Megan smiled faintly, tension tightening in her chest. Charming, isn't it? As they pushed deeper into the building, the faint outlines on the wall became clearer. Megan gently traced the symbols, her fingers brushing against peeling paint and splintered wood. The pattern perfectly matched Alan's sketches in the diary. Her pulse quickened, instinctively sensing they were on the verge of uncovering something significant. "Over here," Jack called softly from the far corner. Megan moved swiftly toward him, and together they examined an old, rusted filing cabinet tucked behind stacks of discarded crates. With some effort, Jack pried open the stiff drawer, revealing several folders, yellowed by age and damp. Jack pulled them out carefully, setting them down on a crate. Megan's fingers trembled slightly as she opened the first folder. Inside were grainy black and white photographs. Her breath caught sharply. "Jack, look at these," she whispered urgently. Jack leaned closer, his eyes widening. Each photograph depicted influential figures of 1980s Boston, politicians, prominent businessmen, and city officials. They appeared at clandestine meetings, exchanging envelopes, money clearly changing hands. In several photos stood Paul Reynolds, unmistakable even after all these years. Jack exhaled heavily, disbelief coloring his voice. Alan wasn't just investigating a simple affair. This is a corruption ring, powerful people involved. Megan nodded slowly, heart pounding. She flipped through more photographs, each more damning than the last. Alan Carter had uncovered something explosive, dangerous enough to silence him permanently. Suddenly, a faint sound startled them. A creaking floorboard near the warehouse entrance. Megan froze, adrenaline surging. Jack quickly switched off their flashlights, plunging them into complete darkness. Footsteps echoed softly in the distance, deliberately quiet, yet approaching steadily. "Someone's here," Megan whispered shakily. Jack pressed a reassuring hand gently on her shoulder, signaling silence. They crouched behind stacked crates, barely breathing. Through gaps in the wooden slats, Megan saw a shadowy figure emerge from the entrance. Tall and indistinct, the figure hesitated, scanning the darkness methodically. Megan's pulse hammered, loudly in her ears. Minutes dragged by, impossibly slow. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the intruder turned and retreated quietly into the night. They remained motionless until the footsteps faded completely. Jack finally exhaled deeply. "We need to leave now." They quickly gathered the photographs, placing them securely into Megan's bag. Emerging cautiously from the warehouse, the chill night air hit their faces, offering relief from the oppressive tension inside. Back at Megan's apartment, they spread out their findings again, trying to process the overwhelming revelations. "Alan was onto something huge," Megan murmured, fingers tracing Paul Reynolds' image thoughtfully. "These people wouldn't hesitate to protect their secrets." Jack nodded gravely. "We must be careful, Megan. Powerful people don't like their secrets exposed." Exhausted but determined, Megan spent the next day compiling a preliminary report on the photos, careful to omit specific details for now. When published, her article sent shockwaves through Boston. The city buzzed again with Alan Carter's forgotten mystery. Headlines revived his name, sparking renewed speculation and public interest. Late that night, Megan re-examined Alan's diary. This time she found passages revealing a deeply personal side of Alan. His writing, initially precise and methodical, became progressively more anxious, highlighting growing paranoia and suspicion of betrayal. "It's someone close," Alan had scribbled hurriedly. "Someone trusted." Megan's heart tightened, suddenly aware of the enormous emotional weight Alan had carried. She wondered who among Alan's close circle might have betrayed him. Margaret Carter, Ellen Reynolds, even Jack. She shuddered at the thought. The following morning, Megan met Jack at a quiet coffee shop near Boston Common. He appeared unusually solemn, lost in thought. "You all right?" she asked gently. Jack sighed, sipping his coffee slowly. "Seeing those photos, it makes Alan's disappearance even harder. He never mentioned anything like this to me." Megan hesitated briefly before speaking. "Jack, Alan thought someone he trusted was involved. Do you have any idea who that could have been?" Jack shook his head wearily. Alan trusted few people completely. After Sarah died, he closed himself off even more. The mention of Sarah brought silence between them. Megan finally asked softly, "What exactly happened to his daughter?" Jack stared into his coffee cup, pain evident in his features. "She was only 5. Alan was supposed to pick her up from school. He was late, distracted by work. Sarah wandered away and she was struck by a car. Alan never forgave himself. Margaret couldn't forgive him either. The revelation was heavy, heartbreaking. Megan gently squeezed Jack's hand. "I'm so sorry." Jack nodded quietly, regaining composure. Alan's work consumed him afterward. He felt he owed the world redemption for Sarah. As they left the cafe, Megan noticed Jack stiffen suddenly, glancing nervously behind them. "Something wrong?" she asked, alarmed. Jack's voice dropped to a tense whisper. "We're being followed." They quickened their pace, taking sudden turns through narrow alleys and crowded streets, finally losing sight of whoever had trailed them. Megan felt shaken, realization dawning fully. Someone wanted them stopped. Determined to push forward, Megan studied the diary again that evening, searching for missed clues. Her eyes landed on a sketch she had overlooked, a simple drawing of intertwined circles next to familiar train tracks. With sudden clarity, she recognized the site, another. Old depot near South Station. Calling Jack immediately, she said urgently, "I found another place. We need to check it out." Jack agreed, though his voice sounded tired, wary of further danger. At dusk, they carefully approached the second location. Like before, the depot stood empty, decayed by neglect. Inside, their flashlights revealed faded symbols matching Alan's sketches. "This was deliberate," Megan whispered. "Alan left us a trail." Jack moved cautiously, shining his flashlight onto another rusty filing cabinet. It contained files meticulously hidden beneath decayed paperwork. Inside, more documents detailed secret payments, bribes, even coded names. Alan's notes indicated his intention to expose the corruption no matter the cost. Jack ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. Alan knew how dangerous this was, yet he kept digging. His courage was incredible, and it cost him dearly. Megan carefully secured their new findings, feeling a profound sense of responsibility. "We'll finish what Alan started. He deserves that." Jack nodded solemnly, determination strengthening in his eyes. Leaving the depot, the reality of their investigation weighed heavily upon them. Later that night, as Jack sat alone in his kitchen, his phone rang unexpectedly, startling him. The caller ID showed unknown. Hesitantly, he answered. A distorted voice spoke coldly, sending chills down Jack's spine. "Drop this investigation immediately, Carter, or there will be consequences. Terrible consequences. This is your only warning." The line abruptly went dead. Jack sat in stunned silence, gripping the phone tightly, heart racing wildly. The past had awakened, dark and threatening. Someone powerful wanted Alan Carter's secrets buried forever, and they would clearly stop at nothing to ensure that. The chilling threat echoed in Jack's mind long after the call ended. The anonymous warning had rattled him deeply, but rather than deterring them, it only strengthened their resolve. Megan, stubbornly dedicated as ever, refused to back down. The city was buzzing with renewed speculation, driven by Megan's revelations. Paul Reynolds' name splashed across headlines, accusations of corruption circling the influential businessman once more. Megan knew the stakes had grown dangerously high, but uncovering the truth had become her obsession. Despite warnings, Jack and Megan pursued their next lead, Ellen Reynolds. After careful persuasion, Ellen reluctantly agreed to meet. Her elegant townhouse near Beacon Hill spoke of wealth and isolation. Ellen's eyes were haunted, wary. "You must know I've been through this before," Ellen began cautiously, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Speaking out only invites pain." Megan spoke softly but firmly. "Alan trusted you, Ellen. You owe him the truth." Ellen sighed deeply, visibly burdened by memories. Alan uncovered Paul's real nature, something I'd always feared. Paul was charismatic publicly but ruthless behind closed doors. Violent outbursts, threats. He terrified me. Jack leaned forward slightly. "Did Paul threaten Alan directly?" Ellen hesitated, eyes clouded by distress. "I warned Alan that Paul was dangerous, but he persisted. One night, Paul returned home, furious. He told me Alan knew too much. and people who knew too much never lasted long. Her words hung heavily in the silence. Megan gently squeezed Ellen's trembling hand, empathy clear. Ellen met her gaze solemnly. If Paul harmed Alan, I believe he had help. Someone who knew Alan's routines. Someone close. Jack visibly stiffened, eyes darkening. Megan felt the tension ripple through him, though he stayed silent. Leaving Ellen's home, Megan pondered their unsettling conversation. "Jack, are you all right?" Jack forced a smile, hiding his unease. "Just tired of everyone mentioning betrayal. Alan deserved better." Their investigation intensified scrutiny on Paul Reynolds. The pressure mounted daily, causing Paul to issue terse statements, vehemently denying involvement. The city watched eagerly, decades-old secrets resurfacing dramatically. Late one afternoon, Margaret Carter appeared unexpectedly at Megan's apartment, face tight with restrained anger. "Miss Lee, please stop this," Margaret implored desperately, voice shaking. "Let Alan rest. Every article, every headline, it reopens old wounds." Megan softened, recognizing genuine pain. "Margaret, your son deserves answers. Alan." Margaret interrupted sharply, bitterness cracking her composure. "My son chased shadows at the expense of his own family. Alan neglected his daughter, and now you glorify him as some hero. Stop romanticizing his tragedy." Megan sat stunned, Margaret's anguish clear. Margaret continued quietly, tears brimming. "After Sarah died, Alan never recovered. He punished himself, punished us. The truth can't fix that pain." Margaret departed quickly, leaving Megan shaken and conflicted. Was this investigation truly justice, or had it become an obsession mirroring Alan's? Determined yet emotionally drained, Megan devised another tactic. Paul Reynolds frequented an elite private club downtown. She needed access. Hastily improvising, Megan donned oversized sunglasses, a blonde wig, and an ill-fitting designer jacket, borrowed from a friend. Glancing in the mirror, she grimaced at the absurdity of her disguise. Jack raised an eyebrow skeptically when he saw her. "You're not seriously planning to enter that club dressed like a failed celebrity, are you?" Jack teased dryly. "Desperate times." Megan shrugged sheepishly, adjusting the wig awkwardly. Jack chuckled quietly, tension momentarily easing. Predictably, her disguise failed spectacularly. She barely entered before security politely yet firmly escorted her out. Jack laughed openly as she returned, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Not one word," Megan warned, struggling to keep a straight face. Jack grinned, mockingly serious. "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it, detective." That night, however, humor faded again. Alone, Megan revisited Alan's diary meticulously, determined not to miss any hidden clue. Her heart skipped suddenly as she noticed a page she'd previously overlooked. A subtle but distinct sketch depicted two circles overlapping, one labeled trust, the other family. Where they intersected, Alan had scribbled a small, discreetly placed J. Megan felt her stomach drop. Could J mean Jack? Alan's brother, his trusted confidant? Her mind spun with confusion and doubt. Jack had been nothing but supportive, yet Alan's paranoia about betrayal felt uncomfortably justified now. Unable to sleep, Megan wandered aimlessly around her apartment, anxiety knotting her thoughts. Had she been naive to trust Jack so completely? Alan's diary strongly suggested otherwise. Determined to find clarity, Megan discreetly searched old police records online, desperate for anything linking Jack to Alan's disappearance. Instead, she discovered unsettling information. After Sarah's death, Jack had distanced himself from Alan significantly. Police reports documented several heated altercations between them, arguments severe enough to warrant brief interventions by officers. Megan's pulse quickened, suspicion mounting. The following morning, Megan nervously met Jack at their usual coffee shop, struggling to mask her unease. Jack sensed tension immediately, eyeing her curiously. "You're unusually quiet today," Jack observed, voice gentle. "Everything all right?" Megan hesitated, heart racing. "Jack, did you and Alan ever fight?" "I mean, after Sarah's death? Were things difficult between you?" Jack's eyes darkened briefly, clearly uncomfortable. Alan and I argued sometimes, yes. After Sarah died, grief changed him, changed us both. But I never stopped loving him, Megan. His sincerity seemed genuine, leaving Megan even more conflicted. Jack, Alan's diary, there's a sketch mentioning family betrayal. It specifically points to Jay. You understand how that looks, right? Jack paled clearly, shocked. Alan thought I betrayed him? Megan, I swear I never... His phone rang abruptly, interrupting. Jack answered cautiously, eyes narrowing as he listened. His expression grew increasingly grim. Ending the call, he stared silently at Megan, visibly shaken. What happened? Megan asked anxiously. Jack exhaled slowly, voice barely audible. Another threat. They know about your questions, about us digging into Alan's past. They're warning us again. This is getting dangerous. Megan's mind raced. Doubt lingered, intensified by Alan's cryptic diary and Jack's strained reactions. Could Jack truly be innocent, or was she overlooking an obvious truth? Jack's eyes met hers seriously. Megan, someone wants us stopped, badly. Whatever. Alan uncovered involves people willing to kill to hide their secrets. The realization terrified her, yet Megan remained resolute. Then we can't back down now. Jack nodded solemnly. Agreed. But we must be careful. Trust no one completely, not even each other. His words echoed hauntingly, chilling Megan deeply. Leaving the cafe separately, Megan couldn't shake the uneasy sensation that Alan's tragedy was repeating itself. She trusted Jack, but Alan had trusted him once too. Returning home, Megan stared numbly at Alan's diary again, heart heavy. She felt trapped between loyalty and suspicion, truth and deception. The J sketched deliberately beside family. Betrayal stared accusingly back at her, unyielding. Had Alan truly been betrayed by his own brother? Megan sank heavily onto her couch, head spinning. She knew one thing clearly. Whoever had betrayed Alan was close, painfully close. And now, Megan feared she was closer to the truth than she'd ever imagined, a truth darker and more heartbreaking than any she'd expected. Megan paced anxiously around her apartment, Alan Carter's diary spread open on her table. The sketch indicating family betrayal, the simple yet damning letter J, seemed to burn into her consciousness, tormenting her with uncertainty. Jack Carter, Alan's trusted brother, had become a question she could no longer ignore. As the city lights flickered softly outside her window, Megan made a difficult decision. She picked up her phone and dialed Jack's number, feeling her heart beat faster with every ring. When Jack answered, his voice sounded heavy, weary from days of relentless pressure. Jack, Megan began carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. A long silence hung on the line before Jack finally spoke, his tone cautious. All right, Megan. Meet me by the Charlestown Bridge. It's quiet there. We can speak privately. An hour later, Megan stood near the bridge, her breath visible in the chilly night air. Jack approached slowly, hands in his pockets, his face etched deeply with exhaustion and worry. What's going on, Megan? Jack asked quietly, stopping. Just a few feet away, Megan hesitated, then opened Alan's diary, carefully pointing to the page bearing the sketch. Jack, Alan drew this, a family betrayal marked by your initial. What does this mean? Jack stared at the page, visibly shaken. His shoulders sank heavily, and when he looked up, Megan saw genuine pain and confusion in his eyes. Megan, please listen. I had arguments with Alan, yes. Terrible ones after Sarah's death. I blamed him for being negligent. But I'd never hurt my brother. You have to believe me. Megan's voice trembled slightly. Then why did Alan suspect you? Jack? Jack sighed deeply, turning to look over the dark water below. Because someone wanted him to. I've thought about this for years. Alan was paranoid toward the end. Anyone could have manipulated him, maybe even Paul Reynolds himself. Why? Paul? Megan pressed, feeling increasingly uncertain. Jack turned back, earnest and intense. Because Paul had everything to gain by turning Alan against his own family. It was Paul who wanted Alan out of the picture. Suddenly, Megan's phone buzzed, startling her. She glanced at the screen, her heart jumping. It was an unknown number. Answering cautiously, she heard a distorted voice, cold and clear. "If you want answers about Alan Carter, come alone to the Charlestown Bridge tonight. Paul Reynolds will meet you there." Megan's pulse raced. She looked up sharply at Jack. "Someone just arranged a meeting with Paul Reynolds, right here, tonight." Jack shook his head, alarmed. "This feels like a trap, Megan." "I need answers," Megan insisted firmly. "I'll take that risk." Jack's eyes showed conflict, but he nodded grimly. "Then I'm staying nearby, out of sight but close, enough to help if needed." Half an hour passed slowly. Megan stood anxiously alone, the river's dark waters whispering beneath the bridge. Footsteps echoed sharply through the quiet night. Paul Reynolds appeared, older yet imposing, his face lined by years of secrets. "You're persistent, Miss Lee," Paul said coolly, stopping several feet away. "Just like Alan Carter." Megan steadied herself, fighting nerves. "Did you kill Alan?" Paul scoffed bitterly, shaking his head. "Alan's death destroyed my life. Why would I kill him?" "Because Alan discovered your corruption, your violent side." Megan countered firmly, standing her ground. "You threatened. Ellen terrified her. Why not Alan?" Paul's expression shifted, revealing an unexpected vulnerability. "I was a terrible husband, volatile, controlling. But a murderer? No. I hired Alan out of jealousy, not to kill him. I wanted proof Ellen was betraying me, not blood on my hands." "Then who?" Megan demanded, frustration rising. "Who had motive enough to silence Alan?" Paul's gaze drifted toward the shadows behind her, his voice turning cold. "Ask his brother." Megan turned sharply, heart sinking. Jack stood nearby, his face stricken with betrayal. "Paul, you lying bastard!" Jack shouted, anger and anguish raw in his voice. "You're manipulating everything, just like you did back then." Paul stepped back defensively as Jack rushed forward, eyes blazing. Megan stepped quickly between them, heart racing. "Jack, stop!" Jack halted abruptly, breathing hard. Paul straightened himself, voice deadly calm. "Believe what you want, Megan. Alan suspected betrayal from his own family. Look closer to home." Paul Reynolds vanished swiftly into the darkness, leaving Megan and Jack alone, tension thick between them. "Jack," Megan began cautiously, confusion tearing at her trust. "I want to believe you, but why does everyone point back to you?" Jack's eyes filled with hurt. "Alan and I argued terribly after Sarah's death. He accused me of blaming him unfairly. I did. I was cruel, but I swear, Megan, I never harmed him." Flashbacks flooded Megan's mind, snippets from Alan's diary now taking on deeper meaning. Alan's private words revealed the depth of anguish their family had endured, marked by grief and blame. Alan's suspicion of betrayal came not only from paranoia, but from deep emotional wounds easily exploited. Exhausted and uncertain, Megan parted from Jack, needing time to think. Hours later, unable to sleep, she received a text from Jack, simple yet cryptic. "Megan, I must leave for a while. I need to find the truth alone. I failed Alan as a brother, but not as his killer. Trust no one, not even me, until this is over." Her heart sank with dread. Jack's abrupt departure deepened her suspicion and confusion. Alone again, Megan combed through Alan's diary once more, desperate for clarity. Hidden within the final pages, she noticed another faint sketch she'd previously missed, an unmistakable outline of the Charlestown Bridge, marked with tiny symbols indicating time and date. The night Alan vanished. Realization struck Megan sharply. Alan's final meeting had taken place exactly where she'd confronted Paul and Jack tonight. Someone had orchestrated everything, deliberately echoing the past, leading Megan in circles. Doubts surged fiercely. Could Jack's presence tonight have been intentional, not protective? Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, breaking her turbulent thoughts. She answered quickly, breath catching at the urgency in the voice on the other end. "Miss Lee, I can't stay silent anymore," a frightened voice whispered shakily. "I saw something that night in 1983. the night Alan disappeared. Please, meet me tomorrow morning. You deserve the truth. Megan's heart thundered in her chest, hope and fear colliding violently. After decades of silence, finally, a key witness was ready to speak. She sat motionless, staring into the darkness outside, realizing with chilling clarity, tomorrow, after so long, she might finally learn exactly what happened to Alan Carter. Dawn broke quietly over the city, bathing the streets in soft shades of gold. Megan had barely slept, her mind racing with anticipation and dread. The anonymous call from the night before replayed endlessly in her thoughts. A key witness was finally ready to speak. This was the moment Megan had relentlessly pursued, yet now that it was upon her, the truth felt terrifyingly close. The meeting was set at a quiet coffee shop near the Charles River. Megan arrived early, nerves knotting her stomach. She sat alone, at a corner table, heart jumping each time the cafe door opened. Minutes felt like hours until finally, a frail elderly man entered. His eyes nervously scanned the room, landing on Megan. He approached slowly, clutching an old baseball cap anxiously. "Miss Lee?" His voice was gentle, uncertain. Megan stood quickly. "Yes, please sit. Thank you for coming." The old man settled, cautiously, glancing around before leaning in closer. "My name is Samuel Owens. I worked nights near Quincy Market in 1983. I saw Alan Carter that night." Megan's heart raced, pulse quickening with excitement. "Tell me everything, Mr. Owens. Every detail matters." Samuel sighed deeply, eyes clouded by painful memories. "Alan was arguing fiercely with another man by the Charlestown Bridge. I recognized him immediately. It was Jack Carter, Alan's own brother." Megan's chest tightened, breath catching sharply. Samuel continued hesitantly, clearly haunted. "Their..." Voices grew louder. Alan accused Jack of resentment, envy, said Jack had always been jealous of his success. Jack shouted back, angry and hurt. He blamed Alan for their family's tragedy, said Alan cared more about strangers' problems than his own daughter. Samuel paused, visibly distressed. Megan gently encouraged, "Go on, please." They grappled. Jack pushed Alan back. It wasn't meant to harm. But Alan stumbled. He lost his balance, hitting his head against the concrete edge of the bridge. It was an accident, but Alan lay motionless. Samuel's voice cracked, his eyes filled with guilt. "I was terrified, paralyzed." Jack panicked. He tried to wake Alan, begging him to get up. When he realized Alan was gone, he carried his brother away into the shadows. Megan sat stunned, the devastating truth clear. Jack Carter, consumed by guilt and fear, had hidden Alan's death all these years. Tears blurred Megan's vision, compassion mixing with sorrow. "Why didn't you come forward earlier?" Megan asked softly. Samuel's eyes lowered, ashamed. "Jack threatened me fiercely that night. He begged me to keep silent. He said revealing the truth would only destroy what was left of their family." "I was a coward, Miss Lee. I kept silent out of fear." Megan placed a comforting hand on Samuel's trembling fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Owens. Your courage today means everything." Leaving Samuel, Megan stood by the Charles River, wind gently rustling. The trees. The weight of the revelation was overwhelming. Jack, Alan's trusted brother, had lived decades with unbearable guilt. Megan knew exactly where Alan would be. Jack had hidden him near the river, in the place where their lives tragically fractured. Heart pounding, Megan made her way along the riverbank, guided by instinct. Near an isolated section shaded by tall trees, the earth appeared disturbed, subtly uneven. Kneeling down, Megan carefully brushed away leaves and dirt, revealing weathered fabric, fragments of old clothing, a detective's coat Alan wore that fateful night. Her breath caught, grief choking her. She stepped back shakily, dialing authorities immediately. Hours passed in a blur. Police arrived, carefully excavating the site. Jack watched silently from a distance, unnoticed initially. Megan spotted him. Finally, eyes red from tears, utterly broken. Jack approached slowly, raising his hands in surrender. Police officers moved swiftly toward him, but Megan intervened gently. "Please," she urged softly, "let him speak first." Jack's eyes locked onto Megan's, overwhelmed by remorse. "It was an accident, Megan," he pleaded, voice trembling. "I loved Alan. God, I loved him. But I resented him, deeply. Alan was everything I wasn't. Confident, admired, successful. After Sarah died, my bitterness grew. That night, our argument spiraled. Alan confronted me about my envy, and I lashed out. He fell, and I panicked. Hiding his body was cowardly, unforgivable. Jack's confession spilled forth, unburdening decades of unbearable guilt. Officers gently took him into custody. His shoulders slumped in resignation. Megan watched silently, heart aching for the Carter family's tragedy finally laid bare. The following days brought closure, long overdue. Alan Carter received the dignified burial he deserved, mourned deeply by Boston. Margaret Carter stood stoically by the graveside, finally allowing herself to grieve openly for her lost son. Megan attended quietly, witnessing the family's pain and healing with profound empathy. After the ceremony, Megan gently approached Margaret, diary in hand. Margaret's eyes widened slightly, recognition immediate. "Mrs. Carter," Megan began, softly, offering Alan's diary tenderly. "This belonged to Alan. It reveals the man behind the detective. His fears, his struggles, his humanity. I think he'd want you to have it." Margaret's fingers brushed the diary's worn cover, tears filling her eyes. "Thank you, Megan. You've done something remarkable. You gave Alan back to us." Returning home, Megan wrote carefully, crafting her definitive article about Alan Carter. She detailed his courage, his tragic fate, the complexity of family bonds, and the corrosive nature of secrets and envy. The city embraced Alan's legacy anew, no longer merely as a vanished detective, but as a deeply human figure whose life embodied courage, vulnerability, and redemption. Days later, Megan visited Jack in custody. He looked older, tired, yet relieved. "Megan," Jack whispered, eyes sincere. "Thank you for giving Alan peace. And thank you for making me face myself." Megan nodded gently, compassion overriding any lingering bitterness. Alan's truth deserved to be told. Jack's eyes welled, voice barely audible. "I'll spend my life seeking forgiveness. Alan taught me courage in death. I hope one day, somehow, to honor that." Walking away, Megan felt both sadness and closure. Alan Carter's story was finally whole, his memory no longer clouded by unanswered questions. His diary's final pages echoed clearly in Megan's mind, the sketches now symbols of struggle, sacrifice, and hope. The final scene unfolded quietly. Megan knocked gently on Margaret Carter's door one last time. Margaret welcomed her warmly, inviting her inside. The diary rested prominently on a small table, carefully preserved. Margaret spoke softly, eyes reflective. "I read Alan's words, repeatedly. He was flawed, troubled, but he loved deeply. Reading his thoughts, I finally understand. Alan lost Sarah, and then himself. Jack lost Alan, then his own humanity. We all lost something." Megan listened quietly, feeling profound respect for Margaret's strength. Margaret gently touched the diary, smiling faintly through tears. "Alan found a way back to us through your persistence. You gave my son the dignity he deserved, Megan. Now our family can finally heal." As Megan left, walking slowly through Boston's sunlit streets, she felt peace settle within her heart. Alan Carter's story, tragic, complex, deeply human, had finally reached its rightful conclusion, and while loss had marked the Carter family, truth had allowed healing to begin. Boston continued bustling around Megan, oblivious to the quiet resolution she'd helped bring about. Yet deep inside, Megan knew Alan Carter's legacy would endure, a reminder of how secrets divide and truth unites, how envy wounds and forgiveness heals. And in that quiet moment, Megan felt the unmistakable presence of Alan Carter beside her. His courage, his compassion, and his relentless pursuit of truth now guiding her own path forward.